Hello and welcome to Wrestling in 1990, Episode 9. Today's topic, FMW, Frontier Martial Arts Wrestling. We usually start these episodes with who the champions are going into 1990, but for this one, there are no champions going into 1990. So let's quickly talk about Atsushi Onita post All Japan. As you probably all know, Atsushi Onita was the junior heavyweight champion in All Japan Pro Wrestling, and he suffered a severe knee injury. He tried to make a comeback, but his knee was severely damaged to the point where Giant Baba was like, "Nope, you're done, your career's over." When Onita decided he wanted to wrestle again, there wasn't a lot of options out there. He couldn't go to All Japan, New Japan was not interested, and there were very little companies in Japan to begin with. Onita did wrestle for Pioneer Senshi, and he also had one match for the original JWP. This was a women's wrestling promotion that did not get over too big with the fans because they're there to see women's wrestling, and now these two guys are wrestling, so he needed to find a way back into wrestling. At this point in time, the UWF had restarted their company and were doing very good business. So Atsushi Onita decided to go to a UWF show and try to get in to challenge the UWF wrestlers. He was turned away at the door for not having a ticket. The fans that witnessed this took this as the UWF guys are scared of Atsushi Onita. So since Onita could not fight the UWF wrestlers, he would do the next best thing, and he would start a program with Masashi Aoyagi and the World Karate Association. There would be a series of shows that would happen that would go under the name of Frontier Martial Arts Wrestling. It would be Atsushi Onita and his wrestling friends versus Masashi Aoyagi and his WKA fighters. These would be very successful, and in 1990, FMW would start being a legit promotion. So let's get into 1990, and the first big thing that happened in 1990 is a champion was finally crowned. This would be Beast the Barbarian, who would bring the WWA Brass Knuckles title from WWA in Mexico. Beast the Barbarian's first title defense would be against Atsushi Onita in the first round of a tournament. Beast the Barbarian would lose the title to Atsushi Onita, ending Beast the Barbarian's reign at only 10 days. What's interesting about this is this was the only title match in the tournament. In the semifinals, Atsushi Onita would lose to Tarzan Goto. Tarzan Goto would make it to the finals, but he would lose to Masanobu Kurisu. Kind of smart booking by Onita here, because you lose to Tarzan Goto, so he definitely gets a shot at the title. But the winner of the tournament is Kurisu, so another challenger for the title. But the first challenger for the title would be Beast the Barbarian, who would get his rematch, but would be unsuccessful as Onita would once again beat him and have his first successful title defense. The ideal first challenger for the WWA Brass Knuckles title would have been Masanobu Kurisu, but he had been fired by FMW for assaulting a fan at a show. FMW would also introduce the AWA World Light Heavyweight title, but this was not the original Light Heavyweight title from the AWA. The AWA was just in such rough shape now, they just brought in a title and called it the AWA Light Heavyweight title and thought they could get away with it, and they did. The first champion was Jimmy Backlund. This would be the future Gigolo Jimmy Del Rey in the WWF. He would not hold the title very long, losing the title to Lee Gak-soo on April 1st of 1990. April 1st of 1990 is also the date of WrestleMania 6. Atsushi Onita's next title defense would be on May 14th when he would defeat Wild Bullman. Wild Bullman and Beast the Barbarian don't seem like suitable challengers for Atsushi Onita, but let's not forget this is in the very early days of FMW, so let's cut him a break for that. On June 9th, Lee Gak-soo would make his first defense of the AWA World Light Heavyweight title, defeating Ricky Fuji. He would defeat Ricky Fuji by disqualification. At this point in time, Lee Gak-soo is really being positioned as the number 2 guy behind Atsushi Onita. In July, Lee Gak-soo would make his second title defense of the AWA World Light Heavyweight title, defeating Koichiro Kimura. On August 4th, the biggest match of the year would take place with two of the biggest stars in FMW for the WWA Brass Knuckles Championship. This match would be a no-rope, barbed wire, current blast death match, also known as an electrified barbed wire death match. With all the deathmatch stuff that goes on nowadays, you look at this match and it's nothing special. But you look at this in 1990 and it is crazy to see what they're doing. Electrified barbed wire, there's blood everywhere. This was really an innovative time for professional wrestling. This is also really the beginning of an ongoing feud for the next few years between Atsushi Onita and Tarzan Goto. They would team up, they would be enemies, they would be friends again, they would be enemies again. This would go on for the next few years. In this match, Atsushi Onita would get the win and get a third successful title defense of the WWA Brass Knuckles Championship. It's also interesting to see what companies had to do in 1990 to be relevant, because you look at the WWF and WrestleMania 6, The Ultimate Warrior versus Hulk Hogan, they're selling out the Sky Dome in Toronto, Canada. The NWA or WCW, they have Sting and Ric Flair at the Great American Bash. And then there's FMW that can't compete with the WWF or the NWA or New Japan or All Japan. So they have to do something outside the box. And barbed wire death matches, electrified barbed wire death matches, it sold back then. Atsushi Onita and Tarzan Goto got put on the map in 1990 for matches like this. On August 18th, Lee Gaksu would defend his title once again versus Ricky Fuji. This time he would beat Ricky Fuji and retain the AWA World Light Heavyweight title. Not long after this match, Lee Gaksu would leave FMW and the AWA World Light Heavyweight title would be vacated. Lee Gaksu would return to FMW the following year for a handful of matches, but after that he would be retired. He would make another appearance in 1998 for DDT, but would stay away from wrestling after that. So to his credit, he did win the AWA World Light Heavyweight title in FMW. At least he got that. On September 25th, the vacant AWA World Light Heavyweight title would be on the line when Katsuji Ueda would defeat Jimmy Backlund to become the brand new champion. These two men would rematch on November 5th, and Jimmy Backlund would win the AWA World Light Heavyweight title from Katsuji Ueda. It's really interesting to see Gigolo Jimmy Del Rey in FMW because he is not at all like he would be with the Heavenly Bodies in the WWF and Smoky Mountain Wrestling. This match would also be the final AWA World Light Heavyweight title match of the year. Also on November 5th, FMW would introduce their first women's title, the WWA Women's Championship, as Combat Toyota would be crowned the first champion, defeating Beastie the Road Warrior. This championship would be around for many years, and it would eventually be unified with the FMW Independent Women's title and would be famously held by FMW's biggest female star, Megumi Kudo. Megumi Kudo was such an important part of FMW that when she retired, the FMW women's division basically fizzled out, to the point that at the end of FMW, the last few years, there was no women's division. Also on November 5th, Atsushi Onita would make his fourth successful title defense of the WWA Brass Knuckles Championship versus a future rival of his, Mr. Pogo. This was basically the first chapter in the Atsushi Onita Mr. Pogo rivalry. They would continue this rivalry into the mid-90s, feuding not only for the WWA Brass Knuckles Championship, but the FMW World Brass Knuckles Heavyweight Championship. Mr. Pogo would be one of the few to defeat Onita for a championship belt. This would be Onita's final title defense of 1990, and it was Onita's best championship reign ever. 4 title defense, he would never even come close to that in his future title reigns. On December 8th, Combat Toyota would have her first successful title defense versus the future female ace of FMW, Megumi Kudo. This is another legendary rivalry. These two would be friends and enemies at different points in time in FMW. That would basically be the last big piece of business FMW would do in 1990. Like I said earlier, both Megumi Kudo and Combat Toyota would be retired by the late 90s. They would both get their start in All Japan Women's Pro Wrestling, but would make a name for themselves in FMW in the early and mid 90s. The AWA World Light Heavyweight title would stick around for another couple of years until it would be abandoned and replaced in 1993 with the FMW Independent World Junior Heavyweight title. That championship is still active in Japan as of this recording. Atsushi Onita would lose the WWA Brass Knuckles Championship on February 27, 1991 versus Gregory Verichev. The WWA Brass Knuckles Championship would be replaced with the WWA Martial Arts Championship, and that title would be replaced with the FMW World Brass Knuckles Championship. There would eventually be an FMW Independent Heavyweight title, and the FMW Independent Heavyweight title and the FMW World Brass Knuckles Heavyweight title would be unified to create the FMW Double title. These two belts would then be split up and then vacated and retired and replaced with the WEW World Heavyweight title, and that's what ended FMW. I have an entire video on that. Atsushi Onita would retire and come out of retirement a few times. He is semi-retired right now. I don't really want to say he's retired because he'll probably jump out of retirement, but he had a very long career for someone that was supposed to be retired in 1985. Tarzan Goto would continue with FMW, and he would leave FMW for IWA Japan in the mid-90s. Never really reached the success that he had in FMW. He would win the WWA Martial Arts Championship in 1991, and that would basically be the highlight of his career. He could never get out of Atsushi Onita's shadow, and really that's the story of FMW. It was Onita's show and nobody else's. And with that, that'll be the end of this episode. Join me next time as we go to Mexico and we talk about EMLL. Thank you for listening and have a great day.